guys, my name is Criado, and today we're going to possibly start a new series on Interesting Random Facts Academy about the history of the World Cups. As you can see, we have a very cheap studio. It's not even a studio, it's just a wall, a board, and the World Cup, the 2018 World Cup album. But today we're going to start talking about the history of World Cups with the first ever World Cup, the 1930 World Cup. Talk about their history, how the World Cup was organized, and the final, the first ever World Cup final. So let's start talking about the history, how it started. So since 1905, there were a lot of people who wanted to make a soccer World Cup, but only when Julius Rimet, who took charge of FIFA in 1920, and he basically applied this idea of making a World Cup, which was finally approved on May 26, 1928. After that, there was new plans of making a World Cup, which was that it's going to be 4 to 4 years like the Olympics, and that it was going to be held in 1930 at that time. So after the announcement was made, many countries were willing to host their nation. Those countries were Spain, Netherlands, Hungary, Italy, and Sweden. They all wanted to host the World Cup in their countries. But it turns out that a guy named Enrique Buero basically persuaded the whole FIFA by saying that Uruguay is celebrating the 100th anniversary of independence in 1928, and that they were 2 times winners of the Olympics. They won in 1924 and 1928, and Uruguay was also going to build a super stadium called Centenario, and also pay all the trip and all the meals of the other countries that were going to participate in the World Cup of that year. So after he persuaded FIFA, the World Cup was confirmed to be held in Uruguay. So now talk about the games. Instead of having 32 countries like today, the 1930 World Cup had only 13 countries at that time, and it was mostly due to many European teams like Italy not wanting to participate in South America. So those 13 teams were Brazil, Uruguay, Yugoslavia, Belgium, Bolivia, Chile, United States, France, Mexico, Paraguay, Peru, and Romania. And at that time, instead of having, because it was not a lot of teams, there was only 4 groups instead of having 8 groups. Group A consisted of 4 teams. Those 4 teams were Argentina, Chile, France, and Mexico. And the other 3 groups were only 3 teams in their groups. So Group B was had only the 3 teams being Yugoslavia, Brazil, and Bolivia. Group C had Peru, Romania, and Uruguay. And Group D had the United States, Belgium, and Paraguay. So since it was a few teams participating, only 1 team in the group stage, the first team, was going to qualify for the semifinals. So the first group, the Group A, Argentina won all the games and turns out to be in first place. In Group B, Brazil lost the first game against Yugoslavia. They won against Bolivia by 4-0, but Yugoslavia also won their game against Bolivia by scoring 4-0. Those Yugoslavia came out to be first place, and Brazil was eliminated in the first round. In Group C, Uruguay won their 2 games. They won against Peru and they won against Romania, those becoming first place. In Group D, United States defeated Belgium by 3-0 and defeated Paraguay by 3-0 as well. The semifinals was between Argentina, Yugoslavia, Uruguay, and United States. So Argentina played the game against the United States in the semifinals, and they literally destroyed by making a 6-1, and Uruguay also won by 6-1 against Yugoslavia. After Argentina and Uruguay destroy their opponents in the semifinals, the final was going to be held. So, talking about the final was at 2 p.m. in the Centenario Stadium. Uruguay scored the first goal, those leading by 1-0. Then Argentina came back with 2-1, and first half was over with Argentina winning the World Cup so far. But then in the second half, Uruguay came back with 3 goals, those making the score 4-2, and the game was over, with Uruguay becoming the first country to win the World Cup.